Peter's teachings about wives and husbands was also revolutionary. The conversion of a husband was no problem, since he would bring his wife along with him. But the conversion of the wife without the husband could result in the most drastic consequences. In every sphere of ancient civilization, women basically had no rights at all. Under Jewish law, a woman was pretty much a thing. She was owned by her husband in the same way as he owned sheep and his goats. She couldn't leave him, though he could dismiss her at any time. For a woman to change her religion apart from her husband was unthinkable in that world. Or Greek civilization dictated that the women remain indoors and be obedient to their husbands. The sign of a good woman was for her to see as little, hear as little, and ask as little as possible. How would you like to put that in vogue today? She enjoyed no sort of independent existence or mind of her own, and her husband could divorce her almost at will, so long as he gave back her dowry. Even Roman law gave her no rights. In law, she remained forever a child. First, she was under the absolute power of her father, even of life and death. When she married, she came under the absolute power and control of her husband. A typical ancient Roman writer called Cato wrote, "If you were to catch your wife in an act of infidelity, you can kill her with impunity without a trial." Roman matrons were prohibited from drinking wine, and Ignatius beat his wife to death when he found her doing so. He's the one that made the Ignatian Way, that great highway. Another Roman kicked his wife out because she had once gone out in the streets without a veil. Another sacked his wife because he saw her secretly speaking to a freed woman in public. Yet another divorced his wife because once she went to the public games. The attitude of ancient civilization was that no woman was allowed to take any decision for herself. Now, understandably, how overwhelming were the problems of a wife who converted while her husband remained devoted to the pagan gods. It's almost impossible for us to comprehend what life must have been like for the wife who had enough courage to become a Christian. Well, what, according to Peter, was the gospel's impact on the husbands? Well, marriage is a two-sided matter, else it is a miserable relationship that is highly vulnerable to failure, Peter says. This concept of privileges for both was revolutionary in the ancient world. The second half of Cato's words are significant here about the rights of the husband. He said, "If you were to catch your wife in an act of infidelity, you can kill her with impunity without a trial." And then he goes on to say, "But if she were to catch you, she would not venture to touch you with her finger, and indeed she has no right to do so." Well, the Roman moral code put all the obligations on the wife and all the privileges with the husband. In contrast, Christianity never grants a privilege to anyone, male or female, without a corresponding obligation. So what are the obligations of the husband in the Christian ethic? Well, he's to be understanding, considerate, sensitive to the feeling of his wife. He must remember that she is the weaker sex, and he must treat her accordingly with courteous deference to her. It was Christianity that introduced chivalry into the relationship between men and women. So not only so must the man remember that the woman has equal spiritual rights, she is a fellow heir of the grace of life. Women did not share in the worship of the Greeks and the Romans Even when they were admitted to the Jewish synagogue, they were separated from the men and hidden behind a screen. It's only in Christianity, this revolutionary concept or principle, it comes into view that women under God have equal spiritual rights, and with that, the relationship between the man and the woman was changed. Further, if a man fails to fulfill those obligations, there is an impassable barrier comes up. Someone has said the size of the injured wife come between the husband's prayers and God's hearing. In this lies a great truth. Our relationships with God can never be right so long as our relationships with others are wrong. Our fellowship with one another affects our fellowship with God.